My name is Burton Harlow, 67 years old and a third-generation farmer from Nebraska. What should have been the proudest day of my life, watching my only daughter Sophia marry, turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. One minute I was toasting the happy couple, the next my new son-in-law Jackson was demanding I sign over my 500-acre farm to him, right in front of 200 stunned wedding guests. When I refused, the slap came hard and fast. Nobody expected what happened next. If you're watching this video, drop a comment telling me where you're from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear who I called after walking out and why Jackson completely lost his mind when he found out. Life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. For me, those tests started early when my dear wife Margaret passed away from cancer 15 years ago, leaving me to raise our 12-year-old daughter Sophia alone. The farm became both our sanctuary and our livelihood. 500 acres of prime agricultural land that's been in my family for 3 generations. Sophia grew up strong despite losing her mother. We formed a bond that I thought nothing could break. She learned to drive a tractor before she could drive a car, helped with harvests every summer, and knew every inch of our land. I still remember her sitting beside me on the porch swing at sunset, saying she couldn't imagine ever living anywhere else. But time changes things, and people too. When Sophia went off to college in Chicago, I knew she'd experience a different world. I just never expected her to bring that world back in the form of Jackson Wells, a corporate lawyer from a wealthy family with connections throughout Illinois. Their romance was a whirlwind, 4 months from meeting to engagement. Too fast in my opinion, but Sophia seemed happy, and that's what mattered. "Dad, he's brilliant and ambitious," she told me during Jackson's first visit to the farm. "He's going to make partner at his firm before he turns 35. I tried to welcome Jackson, truly I did. I showed him around the farm, explained our irrigation systems, introduced him to our prize-winning cattle, and tried to share the legacy that would someday belong to Sophia. But his eyes glazed over at farm talk. The only time he showed real interest was when he asked about property values in the area. "Farmland around here must be worth a fortune these days," he said, scanning the horizon with calculating eyes. "Especially with the highway expansion coming through." Something cold settled in my stomach that day, but I pushed it aside. For Sophia's sake, I needed to make an effort. I invited Jackson to our community barbecues, took him fishing at the creek that runs through our property, and even asked him to help during a small harvest. He always had excuses, meetings that couldn't wait, important calls that needed taking. "Not everyone's cut out for farm life, Burton," my neighbor Thomas Wilkins told me. "City folk have different values." Despite my reservations, I supported their wedding plans. Jackson's family insisted on a lavish affair at the Grand Palmer Hotel in Chicago, with no expense spared. 200 guests, crystal chandeliers, 5-course dinner, and an open bar flowing with top-shelf liquor. The price tag made my head spin, but I contributed significantly, withdrawing money from my retirement fund to help give my daughter the wedding she wanted. "You don't have to do this, Dad," Sophia said when I told her about my contribution. "Jackson's parents have it covered." "I'm still your father," I replied, "and I want to do right by you." What struck me as odd was that despite their apparent wealth, Jackson's family seemed particularly interested in my financial commitment. His father, Richard Wells, a real estate developer with slicked-back silver hair and a $1,000 suit, cornered me at the rehearsal dinner. "Burton, we're so pleased to welcome Sophia into our family," he said, swirling expensive scotch in his glass. "Jackson tells me you've got quite the operation out there in Nebraska." "Just a family farm," I said modestly. "Nothing fancy compared to your business ventures." Richard laughed, a sound without warmth. "Don't sell yourself short. Good farmland is getting harder to come by. Smart investors know its true value." The way he said investors sent a chill through me. I wondered then if I should have listened more closely to my instincts, but I wanted to believe in my daughter's happiness. Sometimes love makes fools of us all, especially a father's love. Looking back, the warning signs were there, flashing like red lights I chose to ignore. 3 specific encounters with Jackson should have told me everything I needed to know about the man my daughter was marrying. The first happened about 5 months before the wedding. Jackson came to the farm alone, supposedly to bond with me. We sat in my kitchen drinking coffee, while he peppered me with questions about the farm's history. "So, this land has been in your family for what, 70 years?" he asked, tapping away at his phone. "Closer to 90, I corrected. My grandfather purchased it during the Depression when many farms were going under. He worked himself nearly to death to keep it afloat. Jackson nodded absently. And it's all paid off? No mortgages or liens? Not a penny owed, I said proudly. That's the Harlow way. We don't believe in debt. He leaned forward then, setting down his phone. Have you ever thought about modernizing? This place could be so much more profitable with the right investments. A little development along the road frontage, perhaps. Maybe some vacation rentals by the creek. The land is wasted just growing corn and soybeans. Wasted? I nearly choked on my coffee. This land feeds people, Jackson. There's no higher purpose for it. He backpedaled quickly, flashing that practiced smile. Of course. I just meant there are ways to maximize returns while maintaining the agricultural aspect. Something to think about for Sophia's future. The second warning came during a family dinner at the farm. I stepped out to the porch for some air and overheard Jackson on the phone, his voice low but intense. The old man's stubborn, but he'll come around, he was saying. Yes, Dad, I know the developers are getting impatient. Trust me, after the wedding, Sophia will help convince him. The aerial surveys show at least 300 acres that could be parceled immediately. No, he has no idea about the highway access point, worth millions once it's rezoned. I stood frozen, unable to believe what I was hearing. When Jackson turned and saw me, he smoothly transitioned. Anyway, send Mom my love. Talk soon. Then to me, without missing a beat, beautiful night, isn't it, Burton? You're lucky to have this peace and quiet. The third incident was the most troubling. 3 weeks before the wedding, Jackson and Sophia came for Sunday lunch. After the meal, Jackson suggested we discuss succession planning for the farm. It's never too early to think about these things, he said casually. My firm specializes in estate planning for high-value properties. We should get the paperwork started to transfer the farm into a joint ownership between you, Sophia, and myself. For tax purposes, of course. Sophia looked uncomfortable. Jackson, we talked about this. Dad will handle the farm transition when he's ready. I'm just being practical, sweetheart, Jackson insisted. Burton isn't getting any younger. What if something happened? The inheritance taxes alone could force a sale. My will and estate are in perfect order, I said firmly. Sophia is my sole heir, and my attorney has structured everything to minimize any tax burden. Jackson's smile tightened. All due respect, Burton, but small-town lawyers don't always understand the complexities of agricultural estate planning. Let my firm review the documents at least. I declined, and the subject was dropped, but the tension lingered through the rest of their visit. After they left, I called my oldest friend Thomas. We'd been neighbors for 40 years, and if anyone would give me straight talk, it would be him. I don't like to speak ill of anyone, Thomas said slowly after I recounted my concerns, but the Wells family has a reputation. Richard Wells has been buying up farmland all across 3 states, flipping it to developers for shopping centers and housing tracts. They're not farmers, Burton, they're land sharks. A week later, I found something that confirmed my worst fears. Jackson had left his briefcase in my truck after I drove them back from dinner in town. When I opened it to make sure nothing important would be locked inside overnight, a folder slipped out. Inside were preliminary development plans for what was labeled Harlow Creek Estates, 250-unit luxury housing development, on my land. With my creek renamed as a selling point, I confronted Sophia the next day, showing her the plans. She seemed genuinely shocked, then defensive. It's just a concept, Dad. Jackson says many farmers your age are looking at development options for retirement. He's thinking about our future, that's all. Did you know about this? I asked, searching her eyes for the truth. Not the specific plans, she admitted, but we've discussed possibilities for the land someday. Dad, you can't expect it to stay exactly the same forever. This is your heritage, I said, my voice breaking. Your mother and I always imagined you raising your children here someday. She softened then, taking my hand. And maybe we will, in part of it. But Jackson says we could do so much more with this property. Think bigger. I realized then that Jackson had been working on my daughter's expectations too, planting seeds of discontent with the simple farming life she'd once loved. But I couldn't prove his intentions were malicious, and any stronger objections would only push Sophia away. The week before the wedding, I noticed Jackson taking an unusual interest in my office during another visit. He asked pointed questions about where I kept important documents, the deed to the farm, bank statements, claiming he wanted to help organize things for Sophia's sake. That night, I gathered all the important farm documentation and drove to town, placing everything in my safe deposit box at the bank. Something told me to keep the keys and papers closed from now on. Call it a farmer's instinct for approaching storms. The morning of Sophia's wedding dawned clear and beautiful. June in Chicago brought perfect weather, sunshine streaming through the stained glass windows of St. Matthew's Cathedral as I adjusted my tie in a small anteroom. My hands trembled slightly, a mixture of emotion and lingering unease about the day ahead. "Dad, are you ready?" Sophia appeared in the doorway, a vision in white lace. Her mother's pearl necklace graced her throat, something old amidst everything new. "You look just like her," I said, my voice thick. "Margaret would have been so proud of the woman our daughter had become." "Don't make me cry before we even start," Sophia laughed, blinking back tears. Walking her down the aisle was both the proudest and most difficult moment of my life. Each step brought her closer to Jackson, who stood at the altar, looking impeccably groomed in his designer tuxedo. His smile seemed genuine as he watched Sophia approach, but when his eyes briefly met mine, I caught something cold and calculating in them. The ceremony itself was traditional and beautiful. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto fingers, and a kiss sealed the union while guests applauded. I kept my doubts locked away, for Sophia's sake. This was her day, and I would not ruin it. "You'll always be my farmer, Dad," she whispered during our father-daughter dance at the reception. "No matter where life takes me." I held her close, memorizing the moment. "And you'll always be my little girl, even in that fancy white dress." As the evening progressed, I noticed Jackson's behavior growing increasingly strange. He disappeared for lengthy phone calls, returning each time looking more agitated. During dinner, he barely touched his food, instead draining glass after glass of champagne. "Everything all right with the groom?" I asked Sophia when we had a moment alone. "Just wedding day nerves and work stress," she assured me. "He's closing a big deal this week. Bad timing, but he couldn't postpone it." Richard Wells cornered me at the bar shortly after. His breath smelled of expensive cigars and scotch as he leaned in conspiratorially. "Burton, now that our families are joined, we should discuss how to maximize our collective assets. Perhaps over golf next week, I have some investment ideas that could benefit us all." "I'm not much of a golfer," I replied. "And my only concern is my daughter's happiness." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course. But happiness requires security, wouldn't you say? Financial planning is a family affair now." Before I could respond, a man approached who introduced himself as David Turner, a former colleague of Jackson's. "Burton Harlow, right? Sophia's father? Congratulations on the beautiful wedding," he said, shaking my hand firmly. When Richard excused himself, David's demeanor changed slightly. "Listen, I don't want to overstep, but be careful with the Wells family," he said quietly. "Jackson left our firm under questionable circumstances. There were client complaints about misrepresentation in property transactions. Nothing that could be proven, but enough smoke to suggest fire." My stomach tightened. "Did you share these concerns with my daughter?" David shook his head. "I tried reaching out when I heard about the engagement, but my messages went unanswered. Jackson has a way of isolating people from outside influences." As the evening continued, I observed Jackson from a distance. He was arguing intensely with someone on the phone near the restrooms, gesturing sharply with his free hand. "The old man's being difficult. Yes, tonight as planned. The paperwork is ready. No, I don't care what it takes. This deal is happening. Too much writing on it." When he turned and saw me, he ended the call abruptly. "Burton, enjoying the celebration? Best day of my life, marrying your daughter." His words slurred slightly from alcohol. "Seems like you have business concerns even on your wedding day," I remarked. "Just tying up loose ends," he replied, straightening his tie nervously. "Nothing for you to worry about." Sophia appeared then, linking her arm through Jackson's. "The photographer wants more family pictures, honey." As they walked away, I noticed Jackson whispering urgently in her ear, her expression shifting from happiness to concern. When she glanced back at me, I saw uncertainty in her eyes that hadn't been there during the ceremony. The unease that had been building in my chest all day grew stronger. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what was happening. The reception continued around me, guests dancing and laughing while I watched Jackson growing increasingly erratic, checking his watch repeatedly. Just before 10 o'clock, Jackson tapped a spoon against his glass, the sound ringing out across the reception hall. Conversations quieted as guests turned toward him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, voice carrying clearly despite his intoxication, "I'd like to call up my beautiful bride Sophia and my new father-in-law Burton for a special family moment." Sophia looked surprised but pleased as she moved to join him. I followed more cautiously, that feeling of wrongness intensifying with each step. "Today isn't just about joining two people," Jackson continued once we stood beside him. "It's about joining two families, two legacies." He raised his glass toward me. "And speaking of legacies, Burton has something very special he'd like to announce. Don't you, Burton?" 200 faces turned toward me expectantly. I had no idea what he was talking about. Jackson's smile stretched wide, his eyes hard. "Tell them about your wedding gift to us, Burton, about the farm." And that's when I realized exactly what was happening, right before everything fell apart. The reception hall fell silent as Jackson placed his arm around my shoulders, his grip surprisingly tight for a man who worked behind a desk. The string quartet in the corner stopped playing mid-song, sensing the sudden tension in the air. "Burton has decided," Jackson announced to the room of 200 guests, "to officially hand over the Harlow family farm to us as a wedding present. 500 acres of prime Nebraska farmland." He turned to me with that plastic smile. "Right, Burton? Time to pass the torch to the next generation." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sophia stared at me in confusion, her eyes darting between her new husband and me. "This is the first I'm hearing of this," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Jackson's smile remained fixed, but his eyes turned cold. "Don't be modest, Burton. We discussed this. The papers are all drawn up, just waiting for your signature." From his inside jacket pocket, he produced a folded document. I even brought them, to make it official in front of everyone. A real celebration. My daughter stepped forward. "Jackson, what are you doing? Dad and I never discussed giving us the farm." "It's a surprise, sweetheart," Jackson said through clenched teeth. "Your father and I worked it all out. Right, Burton?" The guests were watching now with uncomfortable expressions. What should have been a joyous reception had transformed into an awkward standoff. Jackson's father, Richard, stood near the front, nodding encouragingly, while his mother looked away, seemingly embarrassed. "Jackson, I think you've had too much to drink," I said evenly. "This isn't the time or place to discuss property matters." His face flushed red. "Just sign the papers, old man," he hissed, low enough that only Sophia and I could hear. "Don't make a scene at your daughter's wedding." "Dad?" Sophia's voice wavered with uncertainty. I looked my daughter in the eyes, seeing her confusion and distress. "Sophia, I never agreed to sign over the farm. Not today, not ever. I don't know what Jackson's told you, but this is the first I'm hearing of any transfer." Jackson's facade cracked. He grabbed my arm, pulling me a few steps away from Sophia. "Listen to me carefully," he whispered furiously. "I've already committed that land as collateral. The developers are here tonight, expecting to finalize everything. Millions of dollars are on the line. That's your problem, not mine," I replied firmly. He straightened up, addressing the crowd again with forced joviality. "Folks, Burton's being a bit shy about his generosity. But as he told me last month, he's ready to retire and let us take the Harlow legacy in exciting new directions." "I never said that," I stated clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jackson's smile disappeared completely. "Sign the papers, Burton. Now." He thrust the document toward me, along with an expensive pen. "No," I said simply. "The farm stays in my name." "You don't understand." Jackson's voice rose. "I've already spent the development advance. The contracts are signed. If this doesn't go through tonight, everything falls apart." Sophia stepped between us. "Jackson, you did what? What development advance?" Jackson ignored her, focusing his alcohol-fueled rage on me. "You stubborn old fool! That worthless dirt farm is standing in the way of $100 million development. Just sign the papers." "That worthless dirt farm has fed 3 generations of my family," I replied, keeping my voice level. "And it will feed generations to come, God willing. It's not for sale, and it's certainly not being given away." The guests were openly staring now, some recording the confrontation on their phones. Jackson noticed and became more desperate. $2 million, he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I'll give you $2 million cash for your signature right now. I shook my head. The farm is Sophia's inheritance, not yours, and certainly not for some development scheme. It's not just some scheme, Jackson snarled. It's the biggest deal of my career. Harlow Creek Estates, 250 luxury homes where your worthless corn is growing, shopping centers, a golf course, real value instead of dirt and sweat. Sophia gasped. You were planning to develop my family's farm, without even discussing it with me? Jackson finally acknowledged her presence. I was handling it, babe, making our future secure. Your dad doesn't understand progress. By going behind my back? On our wedding day? Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. This isn't going to happen, I said firmly, turning to walk away. Not today, not ever. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. Jackson lunged forward, grabbing my shoulder and spinning me around. You're not walking away from me, old man. His open palm connected with my cheek with such force that I stumbled backward, nearly falling before catching myself on a nearby table. The slap echoed through the sudden silence of the reception hall. Sophia screamed. Several men moved forward instinctively to intervene. The left side of my face burned with pain and humiliation. I straightened slowly, adjusting my tie and collar with deliberate movements. Jackson stood there, chest heaving, seeming almost surprised by his own action. Dad! Sophia rushed to my side. Are you okay? I nodded once, my eyes never leaving Jackson's. I'm fine, sweetheart. Without another word, I turned and walked calmly toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices raised in shock and disapproval. Sophia crying. Jackson shouting excuses. None of it mattered in that moment. I needed air and space to think. As the grand doors of the reception hall closed behind me, I heard Jackson's voice ring out clearly. This isn't over, Burton. You'll regret this. Little did he know just how right he was about one thing. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The night air felt cool against my stinging cheek as I walked through the hotel's ornate garden. My hands trembled, whether from anger or shock I couldn't tell. Finding a secluded bench beside a small fountain, I sat down heavily, the events of the last few minutes replaying in my mind. I pulled out my phone, staring at the screen for a long moment. Then I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Agent Sarah Wilson, FBI. 3 months earlier, Agent Wilson had appeared at my farm, showing her credentials and asking questions about land sales in the area. I'd been suspicious at first, until she explained the nature of her investigation. We're looking into a series of fraudulent land deals across several states, she'd told me. Farms purchased under false pretenses, then flipped to developers after zoning changes pushed through with bribes to local officials. The Wells Group is at the center of our investigation. My blood had run cold hearing the name. Richard Wells? His son is engaged to my daughter. Agent Wilson's expression had been sympathetic but professional. Mr. Harlow, I can't discuss specifics of an active investigation, but I strongly recommend caution in any business dealings with the Wells family. She'd left her card with me. Call me if you notice anything suspicious, day or night. I never told Sophia about the visit. What could I say? That the FBI suspected her future father-in-law of fraud? That her fiancé might be involved? Without proof, it would only drive her away. Now, with my cheek still burning from Jackson's slap, I dialed the number. Agent Wilson answered on the third ring. Mr. Harlow, is everything all right? No, I said quietly. It's not. I think I have information you'll want to hear. I explained the night's events concisely, including Jackson's admission about already spending development, advance money, and having contracts signed. He tried to force me to sign over my farm in front of 200 wedding guests, I concluded. When I refused, he assaulted me. Are you somewhere safe now? She asked immediately. Yes, outside in the garden. But there's more you should know. Jackson mentioned developers being at the wedding tonight, expecting to finalize everything. The line went quiet for a moment. This is very significant, Mr. Harlow. We've been building a case against the Wells Group for months, but we've struggled with finding direct evidence of their methods. What you're describing could be exactly what we need. What should I do now? I asked. Stay where you are. I can have agents at the Grand Palmer Hotel in 20 minutes. Try to avoid further confrontation with Jackson or Richard Wells. After ending the call, I sat for a few more minutes, gathering my composure before returning to the reception. I needed to check on Sophia, make sure she was okay. When I re-entered the reception hall, the atmosphere had completely changed. Small groups of guests huddled together, whispering. The dance floor was empty. The band played softly, uncertainly, as if trying to restore normalcy to a situation far beyond repair. I spotted Sophia immediately, standing near our family's table, her makeup streaked with tears. Jackson was nowhere in sight. As I approached, she looked up, relief washing over her face. "Dad!" I was so worried. She rushed over, touching my reddened cheek gently. "I can't believe he did that. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "Jackson's in the bathroom, trying to pull himself together," she said, her voice hollow. "His father says we should all talk privately, work this out as a family." Before I could respond, Richard Wells appeared, his expression carefully controlled. "Burton, these unfortunate misunderstandings happen. Jackson's under tremendous pressure with this development deal. He shouldn't have lost his temper, but surely we can resolve this without further dramatics." "Misunderstandings?" I echoed. "Your son tried to steal my farm and assaulted me when I refused. Those seem like fairly clear actions to me." Richard's facade slipped slightly. "Be reasonable, Burton. That land is wasted on traditional farming. The development would make all of us wealthy beyond your imagination. 10% of a $100 million project is still $10 million. Think what that could mean for Sophia's future." "I've already considered my daughter's future," I replied. "That's why I'm protecting her inheritance." Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Let me be blunt. If you don't sign those papers tonight, my lawyers will make your life a living hell. Contested wills, competency hearings, agricultural easement challenges. We'll tie that farm up in court until you're bankrupt from legal fees." "Is that how you usually do business, Richard? Threats and intimidation when people won't sell?" A flash of anger crossed his face. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, old man." "Actually," I said calmly, "I think I do, and so does Agent Sarah Wilson of the FBI White-Collar Crimes Division." Richard's face went pale. "What did you say?" "You heard me." I maintained steady eye contact. "She's been investigating your land deals for months, and I just called her with some very interesting information about tonight's events." Just then, Jackson returned, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. When he saw me, he started forward aggressively until his father grabbed his arm, whispering urgently in his ear. Jackson's expression transformed from anger to shock, then to panic. "You called who?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "The FBI," I repeated. "They seem very interested in your development plans and how you finance them." "You stupid old man," Jackson shouted, drawing attention from nearby guests again. "Do you have any idea what you've done? They've been watching us for months." "Jackson!" Richard hissed, trying to silence him. "No, Dad." Jackson was becoming hysterical now. "He's ruined everything. The Mueller contract, the zoning approvals we paid for, the land swaps in Iowa. If the feds start digging..." Sophia stood frozen, her eyes wide with horror as the implications of what she was hearing sank in. "Jackson, what are you saying? What have you done?" Jackson ignored her, jabbing his finger toward me. "This is your fault, all of it. If you'd just signed the papers like you were supposed to." "I think you should leave now," I told him quietly, "before you make things worse for yourself." Richard finally managed to restrain his son. "We're going. Now." He started pulling Jackson toward the exit. "This isn't over!" Jackson shouted, as hotel security approached, alerted by the disturbance. "You'll regret this, Burton! You hear me? You'll regret this!" As they were escorted out, Sophia collapsed into a nearby chair, her wedding dress pooling around her like a deflated dream. "Dad," she whispered, "what's happening? Who did you call?" What was Jackson talking about? I sat beside her, taking her trembling hands in mine. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. There are things about Jackson and his family you need to know." Before I could explain further, the reception hall doors opened, and two men and a woman in dark suits entered, scanning the room before approaching us directly. "Mr. Harlow?" the woman asked, showing her credentials discreetly. "I'm Agent Wilson. We spoke on the phone. I think we need to talk." Sophia looked from the agent to me, realization dawning in her eyes. "FBI? Dad? What have I gotten myself into?" I squeezed her hand gently. "We'll figure it out together, honey, just like we always have." The morning after the wedding dawned gray and rainy, matching the mood in the hotel suite where Sophia and I sat with Agent Wilson and her colleagues. Through the window, we could see FBI agents entering the hotel's north wing, heading toward where the Wells family had been staying. "We're executing search warrants on their rooms and vehicles," Agent Wilson explained. "Based on your statement and the evidence we've been gathering, we have probable cause to believe financial crimes have been committed." Sophia sat beside me on the sofa, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her wedding dress hanging forgotten in the closet. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from a night without sleep. "I still can't believe this," she said, her voice hoarse. "How could I not have seen it?" Agent Wilson's expression softened. "Miss Harlow, people like Jackson Wells are practiced deceivers. They show their victims exactly what they want them to see." "Victims." Sophia repeated the word as if testing its bitter taste. "Is that what I am now?" "You're not alone," Agent Wilson assured her. "Jackson Wells has a pattern we've been tracking for years. You're actually the third daughter of a wealthy landowner he's pursued romantically." My head snapped up. "What did you say?" Agent Wilson opened a folder and slid across several photographs. Margaret Collins in Missouri and Danielle Peterson in Iowa, both from farming families with significant land holdings. Both relationships ended just after land transfers were initiated. I felt sick. "Are you saying he's done this before?" "Yes, but never made it to marriage until now." Agent Wilson turned to Sophia. "Which raises another serious issue. Jackson Wells is already legally married." Sophia's face went white. "That's not possible." "I'm afraid it is. He married Amanda Reeves 2 years ago in Springfield, Missouri. They're separated but never divorced. We've confirmed the marriage is still legally valid." Sophia stood abruptly and rushed to the bathroom. The sound of retching followed. I moved to go after her, but she emerged a moment later, wiping her mouth with a trembling hand. "I want to know everything," she said, steel entering her voice despite her pale face. "No more secrets. Tell me what Jackson has done." For the next hour, Agent Wilson laid out the case they'd been building. The Wells Group had been running a sophisticated scheme targeting valuable agricultural properties across the Midwest. Jackson would identify potential targets, often daughters who stood to inherit family farms. Richard would handle the political side, bribing local officials to change zoning regulations or approve development permits. Once they acquired the properties, they'd flip them to developers at massive profits, Agent Wilson explained. The original owners never saw the true value of their land. In some cases, they used fraudulent appraisals and forged documents to complete transfers. And Jackson's role was to, what? Seduce his way into ownership? The disgust in Sophia's voice was palpable. In several cases, yes. When conventional business approaches failed, they found personal connections more effective. Marriage gives certain legal rights to property in many states. "He never loved me," Sophia said flatly. "It wasn't a question." I reached for her hand. "Honey," she pulled away. "No, Dad. I need to face this. I fell for a con. A long, elaborate con." Agent Wilson continued gently. "We found evidence that Jackson had already taken out loans against future proceeds from developing your father's farm. He used your personal information and forged your signature on several documents." "My signature? How would he even have that?" I remembered all the wedding paperwork Sophia had been signing for months. Vendor contracts, reception details, honeymoon reservations. "The wedding planners folders," I suggested. "You signed dozens of documents." "Which he could have slipped additional papers into," Agent Wilson nodded. "It's a common tactic." Sophia's phone had been buzzing constantly throughout the morning. Now she finally looked at it, her expression hardening. "Jackson's been texting since dawn, saying it's all a misunderstanding. That his father is handling everything." She laughed bitterly. "He still thinks he can talk his way out of this." "What happens now?" I asked Agent Wilson. "We'll need formal statements from both of you. Jackson and Richard Wells will likely be taken into custody today. The evidence suggests wire fraud, conspiracy, bank fraud, and possibly money laundering." The reality of the situation seemed to hit Sophia all at once. Everyone at the wedding saw what happened. Our friends, my colleagues, they all witnessed me marrying a criminal. "You didn't know," I said gently. "No one could blame you for that. I should have listened to you, Dad. You tried to warn me. I was just so sure I knew better." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I pulled her into a hug. my farmer's hands awkward against the soft fabric of her blouse. "You have nothing to be ashamed of, nothing at all." Later that day, after giving our statements, we watched from the hotel lobby as Jackson and Richard Wells were escorted out in handcuffs, their faces grim. News vans had already gathered outside, cameras flashing as the two men were placed in separate vehicles. "I don't want to see this," Sophia said, turning away. We returned to our suite, where Sophia methodically began packing her things. Her movements were mechanical, her eyes distant. "What will you do now?" I asked cautiously. She paused, holding a framed photo of herself and Jackson that had been meant for the gift table. With deliberate movements, she removed the photo and tore it in half, dropping the pieces into the trash. "I don't know, Dad. I can't go back to our apartment. I can't face people at work yet. I just need space." "Come home," I said simply. "Come back to the farm. Just until you figure things out." For the first time since the wedding, a ghost of a smile crossed her lips. "Home sounds good right now." Over the following weeks, the full extent of the Wells family's crimes came to light. Their scheme had victimized dozens of farmers across 5 states. Jackson's preliminary hearing revealed evidence of previous relationships cultivated solely for access to valuable properties. The judge denied bail, citing flight risk and the serious nature of the charges. Sophia filed for annulment immediately, on grounds of fraud and Jackson's existing marriage. She spent hours with FBI forensic accountants, unraveling the damage done to her credit and finances. The loans Jackson had taken out in her name totaled nearly $400,000. "The Bureau will help clear your name," Agent Wilson assured her during one of her regular visits to our farm. "Your testimony is crucial to our case." The media coverage was intense at first. Wedding day fraud. Groom arrested after attempting to steal family farm made headlines nationwide. Reporters camped at the end of our driveway until Sheriff Miller ran them off. Through it all, I watched my daughter's spirit bend but not break. The strong farm girl I'd raised was still in there, beneath the sophisticated city lawyer she'd become. Gradually, I saw glimpses of the old Sophia returning. She started helping with chores, first hesitantly, then with increasing confidence. One evening, about 6 weeks after the wedding, we sat on the porch swing watching the sunset, just like when she was young. "I keep thinking about what Jackson said," Sophia murmured. "That this land is just dirt, that it's worthless compared to what it could become." "And what do you think?" I asked carefully. She was quiet for a moment, watching a hawk circle lazily over the western field. "I think he never understood what makes something valuable. This land isn't just dirt. It's history and future all at once. It's home." I nodded, throat tight with emotion. "Dad," she continued slowly, "would you be open to some changes here? Not development," she added quickly, "but maybe some new approaches, sustainable practices, organic certification, things I've been researching." Hope flickered in my chest. "You're thinking of staying?" "I'm thinking of building something true," she said. "After all the lies, I need something real under my feet." That night, for the first time since Margaret died, I said an extra prayer of gratitude before bed. Despite everything, my daughter was finding her way home. 6 months passed, bringing winter to the farm. Snow blanketed the fields where corn had stood tall in summer, nature's way of giving the land rest before spring's renewal. Inside our farmhouse, Sophia and I had settled into a new rhythm, each of us healing in our own way. The first months had been hardest. Sophia struggled with nightmares, waking in the night, calling out against invisible threats. During days, she threw herself into farm work with almost desperate intensity, as if physical exhaustion might quiet her mind. I recognized the approach, having done the same after Margaret's passing. "You know," I told her one evening as we sat by the fireplace, "working yourself to collapse won't make the pain go away faster." She looked up from her laptop, where she'd been researching organic certification requirements. "I learned that from you, you know. When Mom died, you worked from dawn until you could barely stand." I nodded, acknowledging the truth. "And it didn't help, did it?" The pain was still waiting when I slowed down. "So what does help?" she asked quietly. "Time. Forgiveness, eventually, though that's the hardest part. Not forgiveness for Jackson," I clarified, seeing her expression harden. "Forgiveness for yourself. For not seeing what was happening. For thinking you should have known better." Tears filled her eyes. "How did you know that's what I struggle with most?" "Because I went through it too. After your mother died, I kept thinking of all the signs I missed, treatments we could have tried sooner. The if-onlys will eat you alive if you let them. The trial preparation continued through winter. Jackson and Richard Wells faced multiple federal charges, with evidence mounting as more victims came forward. Jackson's attempt to blame me for entrapment failed spectacularly when recordings of his own admissions at the wedding emerged from guests' phones. Sophia decided not to attend the trial, sending her deposition instead. "I don't need to see his face again," she explained. "I'm reclaiming my story without him in it." Her healing came in unexpected ways. When Thomas from the neighboring farm mentioned his son William was returning from agricultural college to help modernize their operation, Sophia offered to share the research she'd been doing. William, a thoughtful young man with practical knowledge and innovative ideas, became a regular visitor. Together, he and Sophia developed plans for transitioning portions of both farms to organic methods. Their animated discussions about soil conservation and sustainable practices brought a new energy to our kitchen table. William suggested we start an educational program for city kids, Sophia told me one snowy February evening. Summer camps where they can learn where their food comes from. What do you think? "I think it sounds like something your mother would have loved," I replied honestly. Sophia smiled, the expression reaching her eyes in a way I hadn't seen in months. I found her old notebooks in the attic. She had sketched plans for teaching gardens years ago. "Your mother always saw possibilities," I said. "She believed in planting seeds, literal and figurative, that would grow long after her time." That conversation sparked something new in Sophia. She began diving into community outreach, connecting with schools in Chicago where she still had contacts. By March, she'd secured grants for a pilot program, bringing underprivileged students to experience farm life. When spring arrived, we made a momentous decision together. With the help of Agent Wilson, who had become both ally and friend, we established the Harlow Family Farm Trust, a legal structure ensuring the land would remain agricultural in perpetuity. No future developer could ever threaten our legacy. "You're sure about this?" I asked Sophia as we signed the final papers. "This limits what you can do with the property after I'm gone." "I'm more certain of this than anything I've done in years," she replied firmly. "This farm raised me. Now it's going to raise other children too, even if just for a week at a time." The 1-year anniversary of the disastrous wedding day approached with Jackson's sentencing. He received 15 years in federal prison, while his father Richard got 20. The news brought no joy, only a quiet sense of justice and closure. On that anniversary, instead of dwelling on painful memories, Sophia organized a new beginning celebration at the farm. Neighbors, friends, and even some of her former colleagues from Chicago gathered for a simple barbecue under the oak trees. Thomas and William, from the neighboring farm, helped set up tables. Agent Wilson came with her husband and children, looking relaxed in jeans and a casual shirt rather than her usual FBI attire. As twilight settled over the land, I found myself sitting on the porch steps, watching Sophia and William talking animatedly by the barn, their heads close together as they discussed some new farm project. The easy way they moved in each other's space, the genuine smiles they shared, gave me a flutter of hope for possibilities I wouldn't dare mention aloud yet. Sophia caught me watching and waved, excusing herself to join me on the steps. "Happy?" I asked simply. She considered the question carefully before answering. "Getting there. Different than I expected, but real. That's what matters now." I nodded, understanding completely. "Your mother used to say that the true value of anything is measured not in what you can sell it for, but in what it gives back to you over time." She was right, Sophia said, looking out over the gathering of friends on our land. "This farm has given us so much more than money ever could. Safety, purpose, home." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching fireflies begin their evening dance over the fields. "You know what I've learned from all this, Dad?" Sophia finally said. "That sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't what glitter and shine. They're the solid, steady things that sustain you when everything else falls away. Like this land, like your love." I squeezed her hand, too moved for words. "I almost lost myself, chasing something that looked impressive but had no substance," she continued. "I won't make that mistake again." As the evening deepened into night, our friends gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories and laughter. The farm that Jackson had dismissed as worthless dirt proved its true value in the community it sustained, the healing it provided, and the future it promised. Sometimes the hardest moments in life strip away everything but what truly matters. In losing what I thought was my daughter's perfect future, we both found something more precious: her authentic path, rooted in values that couldn't be shaken by empty promises or stolen by clever schemes. What's your most valuable possession? Is it something that can be bought and sold, or something deeper that sustains your soul through life's hardest moments? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more tales from a life lived close to the land. And remember, in a world that often values flash over substance, the greatest wealth comes from knowing who you are and standing firm when life tests your foundations. Thank you for listening to this chapter of my story.